Coming up on tonight's episode of Faith versus Culture, conversation with Kirk Cameron about Lifemark, about Roe, and a whole lot more. Coming up next.
To have sex before you marry is a bad idea.
Don't tell me there's no such thing as gun violence.
That just depends on your definition of when life begins.
There are problems of sin and habit that cannot be solved outside the person of our Lord Jesus Christ.
Well, hello and welcome to this episode of Faith versus Culture right here on the CBN News Channel. My name is Dan Andros. I'm managing editor of CBN's Faithwire.com. Joined today by Billy Hallowell. Billy, what's going on?
Doing well.
Yeah, looking forward to this conversation today. I mean, Kirk Cameron's out with another movie, and this is one he directed, did with the Kendrick brothers, and I happened to see a preview of this, and it's really fantastic, and it's kind of the latest piece of great content from Kirk.
Yeah, you know, and timing is everything, right? Because this is a movie about the life issue. It's about adoption, and that speaks into so many other things that are happening right now. Yeah,
and so Kirk's got a lot going on. He's got a homeschool documentary. He's doing the American Campfire revival. So great to have him on here and talk to him today on the program.
Kirk, you've got a new movie, Lifemark, that you're both the executive producer of and the star of. It hits September 9th as a Fathom event. How is this movie different from some of your past projects?
Well, as you said, I'm excited to get to executive produce a film that I'm actually in as an actor as well. And not only that, this is the first movie that the Kendrick brothers and I have been in together since Fireproof. So if you like Fireproof, if you like Courageous, if you like Facing the Giants and War Room, like who doesn't like the Kendrick movies? I'm a little biased, but I think this is their best one yet. And there's a guy in there who plays the adoptive father. He looks a lot like me, except he doesn't have a beard. And he's really good. So you got to check out Lifemark.
Yeah, and I actually had a chance to preview this when at the Ark Encounter during the homeschooling conference, and it is fantastic. And one of the things I like about this is that, you know, it's based on a true story, and so that story is phenomenal. But what else aside from just that drew you to doing this particular film?
So this is a movie that is coming out at an unbelievably providential moment in history. I mean, who would have thought that Roe v. Wade would be gone? Like, let's say that again. Roe v. Wade is gone. Holy
Crazy.
Smokes. And now here's a movie that's coming on the heels of that Supreme Court decision that celebrates the value of life in the womb and the beauty of adoption. Now, this is especially special to me, and I'm passionate about this because I have 4 adopted children. My wife, Chelsea, and I, we met and got married on the set of Growing Pains. We started this great big family by adopting our kids. Why did we do that? Well, my wife is herself an adopted child. So think about this. My wife was 1 doctor appointment away from not existing. And our 4 children were also this close to not existing. And if my wife hadn't been born, either would our 2 natural born children. So all 6 of our kids and my wife wouldn't be here if people didn't value their life while they were in the womb so that they could grow into these beautiful, amazing people that they are. And the movie Lifemark follows along on this journey of an 18-year-old girl who changes her mind about abortion at the last second. Like on the procedural table, she gives birth to her child in secret, doesn't tell her parents, and places him up for adoption. 19 years later, he contacts her and says that he wants to meet her. She thinks he probably hates her guts for abandoning him, and he wants to meet her to say thank you for my amazing life and for my amazing family. And it's just a story that is full of heart and humor and action and adventure, and you see the impact that one life can have on so many.
You know, a lot of Christians adopt. You know, Christian adoption rate is higher than the general public, but there's still a lot of work to be done, and most Christians are not adopting. So, you know, what's your hope for the film when it comes to that particular facet of the life discussion?
Of course, we are the ones who are adopting the most kids. That's true religion, is we take care of widows and orphans during their time of need. And also, adoption resonates within our heart because if we're children of God, that's not by blood, that's by choice through adoption. Wow, how crazy is that? I mean, think about the fact that Jesus himself was the result of an unplanned pregnancy from a human perspective. Mary didn't know what was going on. Joseph is thinking, oh my goodness, look, I thought I knew Mary, but apparently she's got some other things going on in the dark, and I'm going to divorce her. Turns out this is the one who was promised who would purchase salvation for the world. And we get a chance to somehow understand a bit of that when we practice true religion, which is choosing to bring children into our family, and making them our sons and daughters. And they have full inheritance rights. They are full-fledged family members, and we love them with all of our heart. And that's what God does with us. So I think people are going to see this, and whether you've been touched by abortion as a man, maybe you funded an abortion for your girlfriend back in the day, or maybe you had an abortion, or maybe you've been adopted, or maybe you placed a child for adoption, or maybe you know somebody who's dealing with these things, one of your kids, a friend. This is a movie that is going to touch your heart in so many different ways. It's a 3 or 4 Kleenex movie. That's not a spoiler alert. It's just a little bit of a warning. You are going to be moved very deeply, and you're going to be inspired to action. I think this is one of those Kairos moments in in the history of the family of faith here in America, particularly, where we have an opportunity to do like God and embrace the subject of adoption, because I think it is the answer to the horrors of abortion.
Mm. Yeah, and you mentioned the mom in this movie and her last minute decision there. And one of the things I liked about it was the mom, essentially, there's kind of this, in a subtle way, sort of, she's the hero in this, and that's something that when culture, her initial reaction, I think you just mentioned there about her being afraid of what he was going to think. Like, I think culture has so many ideas on when you get pregnant, what people are going to think of you. Do you think it's important, movies such as this, to change the culture and their idea on not just adoption, but abortion as well?
Oh, yeah. Stories move us. We remember stories. Let me tell, here's a story for you. So my daughter, Isabella, she contacted her birth mother, and she heard the story of how her mother, who was not a Christian, found herself pregnant. She schedules an abortion. She goes down there and she gets a flat tire on the way there. She reschedules the appointment for the abortion. And the next time she went down there, she didn't have a car ride to get there. She didn't have enough money to fix the car. She scheduled it a third time, and something else happened, and she was not able to make that appointment. And because of that, she determined that perhaps this just wasn't meant to be. And she said, you know what? I'm going to try to go to maybe a government place rather than this private clinic. Maybe they can help and I can get this done cheaper. And she saw like a cockroach crawling across the floor. And she said, my baby deserves so much better than this, and decides that she's going to keep her. And that little girl grows up to be my daughter, Isabella. And wow. Now that birth mother comes to know Jesus over the course of time. And Bella spent this last Mother's Day with her biological mother, meeting her for the first time over Mother's Day weekend. What an amazing story. Mm. And stories like that are happening all over the country. My son Luke has a similar story, which is actually is even crazier than all of that. I'm hoping that people see Lifemark and they come out of there saying, this really isn't up for debate. Life is precious. Lives matter in the womb as well as outside of the womb. And adoption is a beautiful thing. You may like to adopt a baby. Maybe you've got questions. I've got family members who are wondering, how will I feel? How will my child feel? What are the ins and outs? What are the ups and downs of adoption? And Lifemark is going to show you a beautiful story that I think will inspire you and motivate you.
Yeah, I love the way that you've approached the story as well. I mean, it's a powerful narrative, and like you said, stories change minds. I want to ask you though, in sort of a practical sense, what do you think is maybe the biggest thing, and maybe there's more than one, but that people get wrong about adoption? There's a lot of claims about adoption, a lot of confusion about it. So, what do you think are one or two things that maybe you could sort of myth bust a little bit on that front?
Well, we've adopted 4 kids, and our experience was great. Not every experience has been like our experience. I have some friends who've had some really challenging um, scenarios with their children. But what I can what I can tell you is that when we follow down the path that God tells us to go down, and that's a path of trusting His promises, obeying His commands, and we understand that we need to love our neighbor as ourselves, and that there are little babies out there and children who need families and parents. True religion is taking care of the fatherless in their time of need. God's going to equip us to play the role in their life that they need us to play. When we engage with God in that process, miracles happen and history is changed.
All right, we're talking to Kirk Cameron about his new movie, Lifemark. We're going to take a quick break. We will be back on the other side of the break. This is Faith versus Culture. All right, welcome back. Faith versus Culture here on the CBN News Channel. We're talking to actor, writer, director, a whole bunch of different titles these days, Kirk Cameron.
You know, Kirk, you were saying earlier the surprise of Roe being overturned. I think for a lot of us, we assumed that would never happen. You would never see Roe going away, and yet the Dobbs decision from the Supreme Court did just that. What was your initial reaction when you saw or read that Roe was going to be gone?
Let's see. My initial reaction was, wait, is this true? Is this really happening? Did this actually just happen? And I think we knew that it was going to happen because of the leak, so we were prepared for all of this. And so one of the reactions that I have is, wait a minute, why would the person who leaked this leak it? Why would they do that? And I think there's actually, a very calculated strategic move there to rile up those who are pro-abortion and get that base really whipped up. We have a midterm election coming up, and so that can be helpful in that regard. So what I understand is that just because Roe is gone and the battle is now kicked down to the state level, which is a great thing. It always should have been. Roe was always an unconstitutional decision, in my view, and in the view of a lot of people that I respect. We have to be careful that those who are pro-life don't say, hey, the work is done, we did it, boom, that's it. No, now comes the real work of rolling up our sleeves, and we have an opportunity to make a huge difference. I even think that this decision could be like the little pebbles that begin to loosen and begin to fall and cascade through other elements of culture within the church, the family of faith, that could cause an avalanche of great positive things in the culture and bring about a revival. I mean, isn't this fantastic? A law that has been on the books for over 50 years now, or just about 50 years, has been demolished, has been rejected, erased, and deleted. This is a fantastic move of God, and we should not waste this opportunity. That's why I'm excited for Lifemark to be coming out right now, because it gives people a view of what you can do. It gives people a real life story that is based on true events that give you the value of life, every life, and then also what you can do to support this massive or take care of this massive need that we're going to have in the country now that we are on the other side of Roe v. Wade. Lots more babies are going to be born, and these babies are going to need homes.
Yeah, and there's, like you said, there's still a lot of work to do, because when I look at the reaction that's unfolding now, I mean, there's so much emotion, particularly from the pro-choice side, the pro-abortion side. How do you see ultimately culture getting shifted around? Is it possible for culture to get shifted around to where a majority of Americans and a majority of people in the world actually can have their eyes open and see that this is a moral wrong?
Well, 100%. I know that for two reasons. One is the Bible. Two is history. So the Bible tells us that that ultimately, when God opens the eyes of his people, they see things the way that God sees them. And the Bible speaks of great victory. The gospel is the good news that the King of heaven has landed on planet Earth, and he has come to defeat and crush the head of the serpent. That's what he came to do. And then after he did that, he said, all authority, both in heaven and on earth, has been given to me. And then he sends his disciples out as his conduits from heaven to invade earth and bring about light into the kingdom of darkness. There was a great power shift where the God of this world was cast out. Jesus was lifted up, and he's drawing all men to himself. So we know that biblically, that the kingdom wins, it doesn't lose. It expands, it doesn't shrink. So yes, I believe that the transformation of the human heart and every heart is possible, because with God, all things are possible. And it doesn't take a majority to prevail. All it takes, according to our founder, John Adams, he said, is a irate, committed minority that is set on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men. And if we have religious freedom, if we have political and economic freedom, and we get back to the mandates from heaven to love God with all of our heart and love our neighbor as ourselves, abortion won't just be illegal, it will be unthinkable. And we will have a culture of people who value and treasure life.
You know, it's interesting because you are among those who speak out fervently on a lot of issues, and you've had a really busy year. You tackled homeschooling, you're tackling adoption and the life issue here.
I got to just pick something, don't I, and focus.
Well, no, the point is, though, I mean, a lot of Christians are super quiet. They're afraid to speak out. We know that that is something that is happening within the church, and we could talk about that. But what is it that compels you to speak out, and how do you choose the different topics you're going to hit?
Well, I could try to wax eloquent here and try to convince you that I've got all of this planned out with some master strategy. I really don't. I see things happening within our cultural sphere, like COVID, that sent millions of children home from public schools. Parents look on their laptop computer and discover that their children are being polluted and perverted, that they're grooming children towards sexual chaos, undermining the most important thing in the world, which is Christianity and a love for our country. And they yank them out of school, and now they're homeschooling them. Not because they wanted to, but because there's no other choice. And all of a sudden, parents are discovering other options and not sending the kids back. So I said, let's do an entire documentary about the homeschool movement. And that's how Homeschool Awakening came to be. And then similar with Lifemark, God providentially sent me a little documentary called I Lived on Parker Avenue. It's a 20-minute short film. You can watch it on YouTube. That's the story that became the movie Lifemark. And I just watched that, and we began making this movie. I called the Kendrick brothers and said, hey guys, I'm gonna make this movie, but you're really the pros at this. Do you think this is a good idea, or am I making a mistake? And Alex and Steven said, not only do we think it would make a good movie, we'd like to produce it with you. And so the three of us got together, and we spent 2.5 years making this movie, only to discover that the Supreme Court throws out Roe v. Wade only 3 months before the movie's coming out in theaters. So it's not my master plan. I think there is a master planner in heaven that's doing a much better job than I could ever do.
What a great way to end here. Kirk, thanks for joining us. The movie is Lifemark. It hits theaters on September 9th. Thanks again, Kirk.
Great to talk to you guys.
We'll be right back with more Faith versus Culture in just a moment.
All right, we are back here on Faith versus Culture, right here on the CBN News Channel. Dan Andros here, Billy Hallowell there. Just finished up our conversation with Kirk Cameron. It's always great to talk to Kirk, and I'm just impressed that he's really relentless with just continuing to speak out, to speak truth into some important issues of the day. And so he just keeps going with it. And I think it's important because, it's not an easy thing to do in today's world. It takes a lot of energy. I know he's got a big family. And also there's consequences as somebody in the Hollywood industry to essentially being a Christian. You're going to be kind of viewed as a pariah in some ways.
Well, yeah. And, it's so important that we do this through storytelling. So I love that he does that through documentaries, but also this film, Lifemark, it's doing it through the arts, right? Reenacting something, a true story, and really giving a voice in this adoption discussion, to the mothers who give their babies up. That's not a voice we often hear. And so I don't know. I think it's incredibly powerful, and it's exciting to see Kirk continue to sort of diversify how he does that.
Yeah. And the adoption issue, it's, as he was talking about, it's super relevant for today, but there are so many misconceptions when it comes to getting pregnant and abortion and adoption. So many misconceptions out there. And it just seems like these are the sorts of stories that help clear up some of those misconceptions, or just paint a different picture than what society at large paints out. And as Kirk was saying, you have to let your faith inform the culture and to create a new culture. And that's what this movie does, and it helps do. And as Christians, we should be pursuing and supporting those types of efforts as often as we can.
Absolutely. It's exciting to see. I hope we see more of it. I hope other filmmakers do it. And I'm looking forward to seeing, Lifemark and seeing what they do next.
Yeah. So go check out your local listings where in your theater near you where it might be playing. And we look forward to hearing everybody's thoughts on that. So, all right, we'll be back to wrap it up on the other side of the break. This is Faith versus Culture. All right, that's all the time we have for this episode of Faith versus Culture. As always, thank you so much for being here. We will be praying for you as you go throughout your week. And Lord willing, we'll see you back here next time. God bless.